And since we last met, the leadership of our country, of course, has changed. We now have a newish government that says its abiding mission over the next 4 or 5 years is economic growth. The question is what that means for us in this room and outside, and the opportunities that we seek in business and corporate life and beyond, especially at a time when some of the accepted norms, the values, things like DEI are in retreat. They're being battered on both sides of the Atlantic. Our panel will tackle the question, DEI and the business landscape in the UK. Before we meet them, let's run a bit of VT. Please put your hands together for, and I'm going to read their names out, Carol Copeland-Thomas, Andrew Lewin, Howard Dauber, Vaughan Gething, James Hollian, and Dr. Carlton Brown. I'll tell you about them as they come to the stage. So Carol Copeland-Thomas is a globally recognized keynote speaker, thought leader, and cultural collaborator with over 36 years of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Andrew Lewin is Member of Parliament for Welwyn Hatfield. He is the chair of the UK Trade and Business Commission and chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on New Towns. Howard Dauber is London's Deputy Mayor for Business and chair of London and Partners. Vaughan Gething, who's going to be joining us online, was first elected to the Senate in 2011. He led Wales's response to the COVID-19 pandemic as Cabinet Secretary for Health, Wellbeing and Sport, and he was elected First Minister of Wales in March last year and now sits as a backbencher representing Cardiff South and Penrith. James Hollian is Managing Director of Business Banking and International Retail at the NatWest Group. And Dr. Carlton Brown is an academic, entrepreneur and founder of the UK Black Business Entrepreneurs Conference. Put your hands together for them. Is there a seat for me? Is there a seat for me there? It means I must stand. That's okay. I'm young and strong. I'm young and strong.
Gething's virtual.
Don't worry. Do you want to grab your mics? That would be helpful.
Thank you.
And let's start off with this. I'm going to start off with you, Carlton. This is the 4th iteration of this conference. Explain why you feel it is so important to continue having a dedicated UK Black Business Entrepreneurs Conference, and particularly at this time.
That's a great question, Henry. Thank you. I don't know. I mean, the UK Black Business Entrepreneur Conference is designed to not only educate but empower African and Caribbean diaspora in the UK. Often we don't get the chances or the access to certain opportunities and networks, which are so invariably important. So this conference is designed to ensure that we get that capacity, but also the opportunity for us to get together, to elevate, to educate, and to inspire each other, and tell our own stories. And it's important because often we live vicariously from what we see, not what we've been told. And there's lots of positive stories that are in our community, and often they're not told. So that's important that we need to keep going, despite the challenges, to create those opportunities for access for opportunities.
Right. And a quick follow-up. Your book, The Race Paradox, is about to be published. How would you describe the current state of Black entrepreneurship in the UK and the challenge for some of the people sitting on that panel who are in charge of how some banks lend to businesses that knock on their door, who can set the political and economic framework for businesses in the capital and beyond?
There is still a disconnect. There's a disparity between intention and reality. In the Race Paradox books, which I describe this as an unconscious illusion of inclusion, between what organisations purport to what they want to do versus the reality of what actually happens. So there is this disconnect, and it's about how do we bridge that disconnect and find real tangible solutions to some of these challenges that exist, because they do exist and they're real challenges. And in terms of the answer to your question, in terms of banking and finance, there's lots of reports out there what tells us that there's still disparities in lending for a variety of different reasons, and banks are often quite risk averse in some contexts. Lots of banks, including NatWest, are being very progressive and have done a lot of work over the last few years in trying to change it and transition that process, but it's still problematic in the wider market.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Carlton. Let's go to James Hollian, because we've lobbed the ball into his court. Carlton has said that you have the right intentions, but there is still a gap. Can you explain how concerned you are about it and what you're doing to address it?
By the way, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm delighted that I've got a NatWest coloured microphone. I don't quite know how that happened. So the data, I think, is really important. And a lot of people talk about these topics and they do it purely with stories and anecdotes. And those stories and anecdotes are incredibly important. But there's 250,000 black-owned businesses within the UK. And they're contributing, I think it's 25 billion of our GDP. So those are amazing numbers, and we as a country should be incredibly proud of that. But the gap, right, to what that would be if it was sort of contributing at the average is another 25 to 100 billion, right, in growth, right, and more wealth for the country overall, as well as those business owners. So those numbers are massive, and they're important to us all. And the government's focus on growth isn't just focus on growth for the sake of it. It's a focus on growth to allow us to have happier lives, to allow us to have a better NHS, to allow us to have better education, and all of those things. And it's important that we, NatWest, work together with the government and other stakeholders to really make a difference on these metrics. In terms of what we're doing at NatWest, we have a partnership with Aston University on the Time to Change report and the CREM Research Institute. We don't make any decisions involving race or colour or ethnicity or anything like that around lending, but we do know there is a lot more that we need to do, which is why we continue to host events like this. We're delighted to have you all here today. We host similar events with other ethnic groups and also with other gender groups. Inclusion is massively important, and despite the kind of global news, I'm delighted to say that NatWest has an unwavering support of inclusion, and we will continue to do so despite the stories and thoughts that come out of other parts of the world.
Thank you very much indeed. Quick follow-up. So the intention is there. The jargon is there, very important. People recognize what you mean. But I mean, what about the implementation? Because we have an implementation crisis in this area and many others. So what do you proactively do?
So there's a bunch of recommendations out of the Time to Change report and things that you'll already be aware of, so I won't go through those. The conundrum I think that I've got when I work on some of these topics, you said this is the fifth one of these? Was the fifth? Fourth one of these? We'll probably be doing them for longer than we'd like to. And certainly at the moment on the topic of inclusion, it feels like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back every now and then. And I just think it's really important to remember this is a marathon and not a sprint. This has been a problem for hundreds of years. I'm not happy with where things are at the moment, but that's not going to stop us being relentless and continuous around trying to make a difference here. So I think that's the most important thing we're continuing to do, being wholly committed and relentless about taking action.
All right, thank you very much indeed. So we've heard from Carlton, we've heard from the NatWest. Let me bring in Andrew Lewin, who is a Member of Parliament and is the chair of the UK Trade and Business Commission. Now, government sets the framework, the tone, makes the weather. How concerned are you about the headwinds in this area? There are people who say, if you reach out to diverse communities and if you're explicit about it, you will lose votes to reform, to the Conservatives, to people who think this is woke and isn't really part of the agenda now. So can you explain what you're doing? How seriously you're taking this? Because some people think that you're running away from it.
Well, good morning. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. And look, I am here at the invitation of Carlton, who is a constituent. And look, it's a huge privilege for me to have been elected just about a year or so ago. And what I would say is that I am still learning. We are all still learning. I'm 1 year into this job. And today, for me, the privilege of being on this panel is to listen, to learn about experiences of your community and to offer some views as to how government can help, but from the perspective of a backbencher. It's a really important question.
Yep.
We have to take this on. When we talk about growth, it has to be inclusive growth. It has to be growth that benefits all our communities and for a purpose, as we heard from James Welch earlier. And you're absolutely right. There is a new challenge. There is a new challenge and a risk in terms of a party like Reform that wants to drive a wedge between communities. So it's even more important and even more incumbent on us to tell the story of inclusive growth and that we are stronger as a consequence of a diverse community. And I was looking again at Carter's report from a few years ago, and I want to just briefly focus on some causes for hope. You know, the reflection that there are more people in the black community in higher education than ever before, that the success rate of entrepreneurs in the community was higher than amongst other communities. There is lots to celebrate, but it is incumbent on us as politicians to help celebrate, to continue to tell that story and say that we will only succeed as an inclusive and a multicultural community. That's what I feel, and that's really important to me. And by the way, representing a community that some people might think in Hertfordshire is sort of homogenous, it's not. Hertfordshire is changing,
yeah.
And the country is changing, and I'm acutely aware of that as an MP.
And government has great convening power. It's also got great spending power, despite what some people claim. When you look at how government departments, government entities spend, often it's with preferred suppliers, people who've spent with, over the years, VIP lanes, if it's for COVID, PPE, and we know about that scandal. When it comes to spending in a diverse and meaningful way, where do you think government agencies are at the moment?
It's a good question. And look, it was a scandal what happened under COVID, and it's absolutely right that our government has launched an investigation into it, and we are seeking to get people's money back. So the industrial strategy was published this week, and focus on that for a minute, because there is a commitment of $2.5 billion more in improving access to finance. And I know a theme that you have explored at this conference previously and will do today is how do we improve that access to finance? How does this feel like a meritocracy? How does it feel like it's not just the usual suspects, winning contracts? And that is something that is imperative that national government opens up and takes on. And there's a consultation at the moment about how we improve access to finance. And it's not just in national government as well, it's in local government. There's a lot of pressure on local government. I sit on the local government select committee. They also need to be open-minded about working with new businesses and new people, and we've got to challenge some of the preconceptions that have gone before, but I'm determined to play a small part in helping to do that if I can.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's talk to Carol Copeland-Thomas, who's flown in directly from the States for our conference, and we're delighted to have you here. Now, if we think things are challenging here, my God, Jinyami. Jinyami is an Akana Ashanti expression, which means, aye, only God, only God. If you go to Accra, if you hear Jinyami, run. Okay. Carol, I mean, it would be silly of me to say, to what extent does this debate resonate with what you're seeing over in the States? What is the picture in the States, and what are black businesses doing to deal with the headwinds which are coming at them from all sides?
Thank you so much for the question. I am delighted to be with all of you. I thank my friend Garth Dallas. I am here as a result of my business relationship with him and Bill Wells in Minnesota. And we are now connected to Dr. Carlton Brown. Thank you so very much. I've met Lord Hastings, and I have brought my family with me so that they can meet you. My daughter is here, Dr. Lorna Thomas Farquharson, and my granddaughters, Juliana and Gabrielle. Black people are resilient. Amen. My people go back to the 1700s in the United States. They were slaves, and those are my roots, but we are all connected to all of you. And yes, it is serious what's going on in the United States. I am a 38-year diversity professional. I've owned my business for nearly 30 years, and much of my work is done in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And many of us are standing up to the headwinds, and I am at the front of that line. I refuse to back down, and my goal and my quest and vision is to embrace inclusion and diversity and do it in a cross-cultural manner. And that's what I am doing. I am very thankful that I live in Massachusetts, which is one of the greatest states in the United States, because of our professional and political leadership. Our governor, Maura Healey, is an openly gay woman. Our attorney general, along with 15 other attorneys general, Andrea Campbell is her name, she is a Black woman, openly came out not only in support of diversity, but talked about and put out guidelines about the legality of diversity, that diversity is legal. And again, 16 attorneys generals across the country. And there's so many other things, but I think mostly of my sponsors, financial service companies like State Street Corporation and other companies, Meet Boston, who have not backed down from my business. They are firm and they are fixed with their commitment. Obviously, they have headwinds as well, and they're having to change language, et cetera. But they have told me that their support is resolute and it will continue. So I'm looking at it from an optimistic point of view because I just told you I come from slave roots. And if we got through slavery, we can get through now.
Amen.
Thank you, Carol. It's great that some of your business relationships have been maintained defiantly, which is excellent, but lots of large companies in the States, which have got huge buying power, huge purchasing power, huge contract power, have retreated under pressure of the withdrawal of contracts by the federal government, the likes of Walmart and others. So what arguments do you forward to those big organizations? How do you explain to them that if you do this, in the end, we all pay a very great price?
I'll use some real examples. Again, I mentioned State Street Corporation and others who I work with. I work with the TJX companies. These are very large organizations. They are finding a way to navigate through the headwinds. The greatest example I have right now is a company that you know, who I honored in March with my Multicultural Symposium series. Dr. Carlton Brown knows about it, and it's a company is Costco. Yeah. Costco is the big wholesale company that is also here in the United Kingdom. I honored them because they pretty much said in November and December, when their board of directors met and then their stockholders met again in January, we are committed to diversity. We are not backing down from diversity because they have millions of members and over 300,000 employees, and they are profitable because of the inclusive, multi-ethnic environment of their employee population, but also their customer base. I don't know about the Costco parking lots here in the United Kingdom, but you go to any Costco in the United States, my daughter will tell you that they're always crowded. I was there dropping off their award in maybe April or so. I couldn't find a place to park, and they had only been open maybe a half an hour or so. They're making money off of it. And money and business are the reasons why diversity work. And so when you look at it from a business perspective, which I always have, then you realize, you look at your demographic pool, whatever country you're in, and if you are serving your customers, then you will be rewarded by productivity, profitability, et cetera. That's how Costco and companies like Costco are looking at the headwinds, and they are defiantly overcoming the challenges that they are encountering.
Carol, thank you very much indeed. Great example there. Cast our minds to our screen. There is Vaughan Gething. I should remind you, he made history. He was the first black president of NUS Wales, first black president of Wales Trades Union Congress, and of course, first black First Minister. Vaughan Gething, we're delighted to have you. To what extent do the discussions that we're having here resonate in Wales? We tend to over-focus on what's happening in England. We don't really hear about some of the other nations. So talk to us about what's happening in Wales, particularly when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, the business community, and its relationship with the Welsh government.
Well, thank you for the invite. I really am sorry I couldn't be with you, particularly when you were running through the food you're going to have. It's a big event to have.
I don't think we have any. Is it Zambia or Zimbabwe?
Zambia.
Yeah, Zambia. We have nothing from Lusaka here.
Well, you have me.
Yeah.
Look, the conversations you're having are really, they resonate because they're common themes we have here in Wales as well. So Wales, a country of 3.5 million people, about 10% of those in the capital, Cardiff, the most diverse part of the country as well. And our experience about how Wales becomes Wales today is much like the story of the rest of the UK. You know, Britain is an island that is shaped by the movement of peoples, the Celts, the Romans, the Saxons, the Normans, Vikings, and a whole bunch of other people, even before you get to the zenith of the empire. And we struggle, I think, to get used to the fact that we are a nation created of different parts of the world. I've always tried to set out that you should be proud of where you're from. And that means both your heritage as well as where you are. You know, so I don't see any dichotomy or problem in me celebrating the fact that I was born in Zambia alongside the fact that I'm Welsh. But all of these conversations about where and how to deliver growth, and importantly, the purpose of growth, is very much here. And you know, I was the economy minister for a time as well, and we run programs around supporting entrepreneurship, and the figures show that people who engage in that program, disproportionately more people who are black or brown engage in the program, and they're successful. The challenge is the base you start from. And to get through some of the historic challenge and the underperformance in overall terms, and I think that goes back to the really helpful points that were made that Black British businesses contributing 25 billion, but really, if the figure was equivalent to the rest of our ethnic makeup across the UK, it would be at least double. And that's the challenge we have. This will be something that requires effort for a longer period of time. And I'm really pleased what Carol said, not just because it's inspirational to hear, but the point about diversity is that if it's only an argument that we make because it's about fairness, then we won't win. It's an essential part of it, but if you just say it's not fair, then that will end up sounding like you're complaining. And there are people who will be used to be told, are you playing the race card to explain why you can't do something? Aren't you just moaning? As opposed to, there is a point about fairness and equity here, and it's important that we're not afraid to make the argument with figures to back it up. But the bigger point, I think, for the whole country is diversity is about common sense. It's good for business, and it's good for the country as well. If you look at the talent that we have, we're prepared to consistently say black talent won't achieve, and we will just tolerate that. That means you're dealing with all the consequences from underachievement in social and economic terms as well. And there's a real cost to everyone who's paying taxes for that not happening, as well as the real cost of the sort of society that we live in. So it's actually good for us to recognize who we are, be more comfortable with, and see, actually, if you can see success from every community in business terms, our country will be better, not just better off, but more at ease with ourselves. And I'll just come back to one of the things I think about in my lifetime. I remember as someone who used to sit in a living room in England, in Dorset, with my white Welsh father screaming at the television like a lunatic on Rugby International Day. And, the teams then, there was a guy called Glenn Webber played rugby for Wales, and he was almost always, when he played, the only black guy in the team. Look at what's rugby and football teams now. You can't imagine a team that looked like the ones that I used to see and wonder what my connection was with them, apart from my lunatic father whirling his arms on the sofa. When you hear from Hal Robson-Kanu, as well as hopefully playing his goal from against Belgium in the BT, our country's changing. It's how we become more and more at ease with ourselves that I think is about getting through the challenges of reform and of the populists, and reminding ourselves and the whole country, this is good for all of us. The people your children play with, the people who nurse people, the people who go into our social care sector, the people who run businesses, the food you eat, these are the people that are part of the future of our country, It's our country in all senses of that, and it's good for business, good for country.
Vaughan, thank you very much indeed. Let me bring in Howard Dauber, London's Deputy Mayor for Business and Chair of London and Partners. He's very experienced and was Managing Director for Strategy at the Canary Wharf Group, supporting major projects like the Elizabeth Line, which works mostly, and the London... when it works, it's brilliant. But sometimes you have to wait 15 minutes for the next train to Heathrow Terminal 5 and London 2012. We've talked a lot about government convening power, spending power, ability to make the weather. From a London point of view, and of course this is where the majority of people of African and Caribbean heritage live, work and run their businesses, what instruments can you employ in order to encourage more black business growth, not just growth, but also success? Because some politicians at the local level, the regional level and national level are very nervous about being too explicit about what they're doing.
Yeah, sod that. Let's start with swearing. So first thing is, I was involved in putting the Crossrail plan together. I didn't actually install the signalling.
Okay.
So it's not. Although it is in fact the most popular railway in the UK. 1 in 6 of all rail journeys take place on Crossrail, say on the Elizabeth Line. So it's doing all right. But frankly, I'm angry and I'm impatient on this issue. I've ended up, I think, being the only person on the panel who's actually currently in a position of authority as the appointed mayor, deputy mayor for business and growth, working for Sir Sadiq Khan, our mayor. But we are not going to wait on this. We've heard a lot of people this morning say, and I think it's absolutely fair to make the point this is going to take a long time. But I suspect for the people in this audience who are currently running businesses in the current environment, they don't want to wait for the next generation or the generation after for these things to be tackled. So this has to be the generation where we break down the barriers, we find the problems, we solve them, and we tackle them. We are doubling down on EDI, which is our version of DEI, because we see it not just as fairness and as a tool for delivering meritocracy. It's about, and this is the way it's been weaponized by those who don't believe in it or who are against it. They've made it sound like, oh, this is about special treatment. This is about people getting some sort of edge over other people. It's not. This is about actually creating a level playing field. And we've doubled down on that, so much so that, for example, when a large American based consultancy company, Accenture, announced, I was going to spare their blushes, but when they announced we are stepping back from this, we're winding down our programs, we said, okay, that's fine. And then they applied for some work with Transport for London, a big project with us. We say, no, you're barred from all our projects from now on until you reverse that position. Because if you don't share our values, you've chosen your side in this argument, and that is not the side that we're on. We're on the other side of the argument, which is doubling down and saying, this is unfinished business. So we produced a growth plan in February, which sets out how we want London to grow. And within that, absolutely centrally, is that principle of making sure that our small businesses of whatever background get a fair crack of the whip and get the support they need to grow, but also particularly that our businesses that are finding barriers, and even though the legislation is there and the policies are there, as we've talked about, the way that's actually implemented and the way it comes down to the point where individual decisions are taken, we hear far too many stories and solid evidence from particularly the black community, but also women owners who face actually quite similar challenges where they go to see a funder and they're not taken seriously. They go to see a supplier when they've got a big contract and the supplier doesn't take their phone call. And our view is not in our city. That's not the city we want London to be. And there are lots and lots of great things about London, but I'll give you a couple of stats, which you probably know already. So black community in London, entrepreneurship runs at twice the level of the rest of the community. So black people literally twice as likely to start a business. That's fantastic. That's a wonderful starting point. But black businesses on average, in the first 2 years, earn a third less than white-owned businesses in London. So less money in. We all know they find it more difficult to get finance, more difficult to find premises, more difficult to get partners, suppliers, and customers. And for that reason, black business is also twice as likely to fail. And that's not acceptable to us. And where we can rifle out individual reasons for that happening, we will do. And for example, on procurement, we started a very good program with what's called the London Anchor Institutions Network, which is it's the Mayor's Office, it's local government, it's the NHS, it's all the big public sector bodies in London. We started a good program with them during COVID, where we got all the procurement people together and talked about how we streamline procurement, make it easier for small businesses to get contracts. So that's about smaller jobs, less paperwork, less hurdles to jump through, and then actually helping businesses to get through those hurdles and fill in the forms. And that, since 2022, has now hit £2.7 billion contracts. But we can go a lot further than that. So one of the things in the growth plan is look at how we work with businesses to help them get into that sector where you're supplying not just the public sector, but big private sector companies. And, you know, you find artificial barriers. So I'll leave you with one story. We had a business who applied for a contract with a local authority in London, and they got to the point where it says, upload your diversity policy. And they said, oh, we don't have a diversity policy. So now we can't apply. We don't have the bit of paper. And they came to me and said, we've got a problem. We haven't got the bit of paper. It's a black-owned business, and most of the people working for it are black people. I was like, okay, so you're exactly the sort of business that local authority is trying to attract, but they're giving it to some big company that's got the bit of paper rather than you that hasn't got the bit of paper. So let's sit down with you and help you write the bit of paper. So practical solutions is what I'm about now. Is, you know, like I said, I want this generation of entrepreneurs to be successful because we've broken down the barriers while you are growing your business, so that the next generation doesn't have to face the same problems.
Okay, great. Howard, thank you very much. I'm conscious of time. I want to allow our panelists to have one or two brief follow-ups, and then, if we can, a couple of questions from our colleagues in the room. So start off with you, Carlton.
Interesting about public procurement. I mean, black and ethnic minorities represent 16% of the UK business population, but yet still, in terms of public procurement, less than 1% of the public procurement is actually spent with black and ethnic minority communities. So there's still this disparity, despite all the efforts, a disparity still exists. That it's those practical, actionable steps, not the platitudes. You know, ultimately, it has to be practical steps that are given to those communities to ensure that they get the access to the opportunities. That's the biggest thing. They're not asking. I don't think there's no one in the African Caribbean communities asking for a handout or a hand up. All they want is equity, I suppose, and getting access to those opportunities. And that's the key fundamental challenge at the moment, still exists, is that disconnect between what organizations want to do versus what they actually do. That's why there's 16% of black SMEs in the UK, less than 1% of that public procurement pot. That's what needs to change pragmatically.
Who on the panel can suggest a practical step, something that you've alluded to there, Carlton, that we haven't yet heard? Because Howard, you gave us one or two, but practical steps. I'm just looking at your faces to see if there's any flickers of life. James, yes. James has burst into life.
At NatWest, we have 12 accelerator hubs up and down the country for small businesses to come and learn how to lead, grow, finance their businesses and do even better. As I said, there's 12 of those up and down the country. There's one of them down on Moorgate. There'll be another one in the back of this building shortly. I'm delighted to say that already we have representation that 50% of those are female, the businesses in there, and 20% of them are with ethnic minority businesses. So we are backing fully those, and those are open always to take on more small businesses if anyone wants to get involved.
Okay.
I'd like to answer from an American point of view very quickly. I'm thinking about the word collaboration. And I'm looking at cross-cultural collaboration. I belong to the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. And what has been said here on this panel is very, very similar to what we are facing in the United States. I realized that when Dr. Carlton Brown was our speaker with the US-UK Summit on Race, the similarities are startling. Even though there are more than 3 million Black businesses in the States, we have access to capital issues, we have sustainability issues, very, very similar. So why not let's have a dialogue between, I'll start with BECMA, I can start that conversation with Nicole Obi, who is our leader, and see what we can come up with in terms of opportunities, challenges, and other ways where we can cross-fertilize the dynamics that are taking place.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Vaughan, do you have a brief intervention to make? A brief one?
Yeah, sorry, I think that what you could do, there's a job here for the government, and that is to look again at procurement. We've been left with a procurement out from the previous government that I think unnecessarily tightens the way procurement works, and it helps to lock people out of procurement. We should take advantage of the opportunity to do this. I think as a country across the UK now, we've always been poor at it. We've written rules to lock people out rather than to allow people in. Other countries in Europe do this much better. There's a big opportunity to get more value from spend and actually for more Black and brown businesses to benefit from that.
Thank you very much for that, Vaughan. Andrew, is this something that you can embrace and bring to government, bring to Kia?
Absolutely, I would embrace it. And one of the things that's striking is how aspirational Gen Z is in terms of being entrepreneurs. They are the generation most interested in being entrepreneurs. There's this concept of being sidepreneurs, young people who are studying but already, launching their own business. And we heard earlier this morning about some of the threats from AI and technology, but of course it brings immense opportunity as well. And young people harnessing that, being, a generation who have grown up with this and being able to translate that into business success is something that I'm excited about. And that has to link into the world of procurement and embracing and looking at new and different suppliers.
Thank you. A brief addendum from you, Howard?
Yeah, I'd say collaboration, absolutely the key. And one of the things that we have struggled to do in this country is we never had an NAACP. So we've never had that big, powerful national organisation that speaks for the Black community with one strong voice, both politically and economically. So, for example, when a bill is put before the House of Representatives in the US, there's then a very, very strong lobby, if it has a disproportionate impact on the Black community, from very, very powerful business groups and millionaires and billionaires from the Black community, and we've never really achieved that yet. So two things. One, we can absolutely learn from the States and get some really fantastic collaboration, both in terms of inspiration from Black business leaders in the States and, actual work, economic collaboration, money flowing both ways, which would be great. But also here in the UK, which is why organisations and events like this are so important, because we need to help each other out. We need to back each other up, share experience. This is a campaign. This is a mission. We aren't finished yet, and it's going to take all of us working together to break down some of these things. So help each other out. We can help. So we have an organisation called Grow London Local. And if you're a London-based business and you're not already involved with that, then it's all free. At one level, it's lots and lots of communication, engagement, networking. The other level, we offer free advice to engage with people like, NatWest and Barclays and Lloyds and other people who've got programs. The public sector grants and loans and extra bits of help that are available. So we provide a signposting service. So Grow London Local. And if you actually end up with a barrier that you can't get over, email me. Because however many people you think you've got in your business, you can add two. You can add me, you can add Sadiq.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. Only a couple of minutes left. If anyone's got a little point they want to add, we're not going to really have time for questions. Yes, gentleman there. Can we get the microphone to him? Do we have a microphone running around?
I've got a microphone.
Okay, thank you very much. It's NatWest, man. It's your house, so yes. Yes.
Thank you. My actual question is actually to James, so it's kind of ironic that he gave me the mic.
That's why he gave you the mic. He didn't want to answer.
It kind of goes back to what you're saying in regards how can the government and kind of private sector help. I've been on the NatWest Accelerator for 2 years, and one of the things I've seen is that it was great for support for having a place to be based as a new business. But the lack of engagement with NatWest regards me working with NatWest from a recruitment point of view, that's why I do IT recruitment. The amount of jobs that you were having from a technology point of view, and I was saying, well, I'm a new business, I work with you, I've got 30 years of recruiting, and I didn't get that engagement. What I seen was possibly what looked like, I'm not saying what is, favoritism to potentially fintech-based business that will help NatWest go forward rather than a supply chain that could, you have as an accelerator numerous businesses that you could break down small pieces of work and offer to them, or at least put them on par with the corporate big players you have. Now I understand because of the financial regulations, a lot of these organizations need to pass certain things, but you have an array of businesses on the accelerators and public sector, their own government accelerators, where you have all these businesses that
You've put James in your crosshairs, he must respond. James.
Yes.
That's quite a long question with quite a long answer. So what I'm going to do is come and find you afterwards and talk about it. Yeah, we definitely need to do better helping the small businesses in terms of engaging with us. That's come from a number of the accelerator businesses.
Henry, can I just pick up on one particular point on that? And I think there's a real practical point here about tier one suppliers in terms of the procurement process. A tier one supplier is often quite big, quite complex, and it's easier and less risk averse for a main corporate to not to want to go with a smaller player. But I think there's a role to play by mandating those tier one suppliers to look at tier two, tier three, and say, part of your mandate, we expect you to look at and engage with diverse businesses and as part of your supply chain. And the key thing is what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So if they get measurement matrix in place to say, this is what we think is necessary, and can you demonstrate the work that you're doing, and you can measure it with tangible economic outcomes. So you can do stuff. You can work through, even if they are risk averse to take on a smaller player, they can do stuff with their supply chain.
Okay, just time enough for one more question, lady there.
Thank you. I work for an organisation called Trampoline. We support business startups in London particularly. And one of our programs, we have over 120 participants on our main cohort. So one of the challenges that many of the startups face, even when they do have money, is premises. So whether it's premises on the road front, a shop, or it's workshops premises, that's the issue. It's not just a funding issue. Sometimes they can't get the contract or get into the premises. They're getting blocked in different ways. So this is probably for Andrew and Howard. How are you supporting with that?
You're absolutely right, and that's one of the things we identified as an issue in the run-up to the growth plan. It affects lots of businesses, it affects lots of community organisations as well, and artists and creative sector. So we're actually setting up an agency, an estate agency inside City Hall to answer this specific problem. And one of the things we want to do is where there's because there's a lot of empty space in this city that isn't being used, and there's a lot of people who need space. And sometimes, I used to be a landlord for 20 years. And we gave a lot of space away because we worked out that you could save the rates and so on by doing a deal. But we took quite an in-depth view on that, and not all landlords are capable of doing that. So what we're going to do is work with landlords and say, let us take the space, and we'll sublet it to people, and you can guarantee, because it's us, you can guarantee that when you need it back, we'll give it back. But drop me an email, because we're doing quite a lot of work on this right now, particularly around high streets and bringing back some big empty high street units, including the bit above the shops into use, specifically for this.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew, did you have anything to add briefly?
Just very quickly, on a national level, the government is really passionate about a community right to buy, where assets, become vacant, that the community can step up and own them. And just an invitation for me, if as Trampoline, if you want to bounce into Hertfordshire and Welwyn Hatfield as well, you're very welcome.
I saw what you did there. Thank you very much. Let's thank our panel, Carol Copeland-Thomas, Andrew Lewin, Howard Dauber, Vaughan Gething, James Holohan, Dr. Carlton Brown. Thank you very much indeed.